Today we are going to be stripping down a Chevrolet hydromatic gearbox, a TH200-4r box. The customer brought in the gearbox with the various faults. It didn't get reverse and it couldn't get drive. So what we need to do is strip down the box and see what's happening inside, what is wrong with it. Apparently the gearbox was sent to another transmission shop. It was rebuilt a month ago and we need to see what went wrong. So now this is your torque converter, okay, which is actually also you can say it's a fluid coupling as well, which does the job of a clutch assembly on an ordinary manual gearbox. But at a later stage, we will dismantle the torque converter, or I'll have it dismantled, and then I'll explain to you the workings, the functions of the components inside at a later stage. Now, over here, we've got your oil pump housing. I've already loosened the bolts here. All right. Okay, this is your kick-down cable, which is fitted on the older type of the automatic gearboxes, which you will not find on the newer electronic boxes. This basically also controls the gear shift and a downshift on the gears, which works off your accelerator pedal. Okay, now what we are going to do is I'm going to turn this box upside down so that I can have access to the sump and to the valve body. All right, now first step is to remove the sump of this transmission. Oops. I've loosened the bolts from the sump. Now I'm going to lever the sump off. All right. Now, as you can see, this oil is black. So that is a vital sign of the health of the automatic gearbox. And it's supposed to be red. Red transmission oil is a sign of a healthy gearbox. While the black, when the oil is turned black, you can smell it's burnt, the oil is broken down, and due to the components breaking down in the gearbox. So now this is your oil filter that filters all the metal sediments, allowing the oil to be filtered and cleaned. And then now this is your valve body. This valve body controls your gear shifts and it runs off oil pressure. So it's very vital that the oil pump has to be in 100% working condition. That is the heart of the gearbox. Because if your heart doesn't function well, you are not going to be healthy. And it's the same thing with the gearbox. If its heart isn't functioning well, it's not going to be running well. Okay, so now the next step here is to strip this valve body from the gearbox. When we talk about the valve body on the gearbox, this is basically the brains of the gearbox. It tells you it senses what speed the gearbox, the car is moving, senses the speed input of the engine and the output speed of the gearbox. Which is the speed of which the vehicle is traveling at. And then it will decide which gears the car should be traveling at according to the various speeds, right? So basically it will choose the gears, first, second, or third, or fourth gear, which is appropriate within the parameters of the variable speeds. Okay, so now I'll be removing this valve body now. We need to also unclip these electrical components. Well, which is just a couple of wires from this solenoid. This is for your overdrive. Okay. Now, we have to be very careful when we dismantle this component, as there are so many intricate parts, which is very vital for the functioning of the transmission. Now, this separator plate, which mounts onto this valve body, then there's your separator plate gaskets to ensure that all the galleries are properly sealed. Now, these little ball bearings act as one-way flow valves, which is mounted in these galleries, and mounts against the separator plate, acting as a one-way flow valve. Even though it looks small, but it's very vital. You miss if you put one ball bearing less, which fits normally into these galleries, then you'll find that it will affect your gear shift pattern, and in some cases you may not get some of the gears. I've put the valve body into the sump with its components so that we do not lose the parts in the process while we are cleaning and assessing the damage on the gearbox and its components. Now I've also removed the plate, the covering. This is also your governor. Now the purpose of the governor, which is found typically in older gearboxes. Right, you've got your little pistons inside here that controls the flow of the transmission through the various ports with oil channels. Now this purely works on centrifugal force. So the faster this thing spins, the higher resistance it creates. So therefore the weight. So now this is spring loaded, right? Under free play, and you find that oil flows through this. It flows through this governor. Now, as it flows through, as it builds up pressure with the speed, because remember, the faster the oil pump turns, the higher the oil pressure. Then it draws these weights closer, which controls the valve up and down, right? As the speed increases, then it moves the valve backwards, channeling the oil, directing the oil to the different channels. And that's what causes your gears to kick over to the next gear. So it works hand in hand with your valve body. Okay, I'm removing this plug here, putting it in the sump where I'm storing the valve body. There we go. You see, the reason why I remove even these small components is there's an O-ring which seals the oil in the gearbox. So when we assemble a box, I'm going to even replace even the smallest of seals and O-rings to ensure that the gearbox will not leak components. Okay, then I'm also removing this plug covering, as it's also got seals inside here. And we have to be very careful that we don't break these components. There we go. You see, the reason why I remove even these small components is there's an O-ring which seals the oil in the gearbox. So when we assemble a box, I'm going to even replace even the smallest of seals and O-rings to ensure that the gearbox will not leak. This is what it looks like with the valve body, the governor, and all the related components, the oil filter removed. So now with this out of our way, we can now start stripping the insides of the gearbox. Your band servos need to also be removed as well, which is mounted on the side of the box. Okay, whoops, there's a lot of oil coming out. Now this is right. Now this is where your one servo, it controls the brake band. But I'll explain to you what's the purpose of the brake band and how it works. But for now, we are just stripping this transmission down. Right, here's the circlip, which holds the servo outer cover in place. Now, I'm going to remove the servo. Yeah, there you go. Now, as you can see, whoever worked on this box used silicone. When the silicone dries up, or and it dislodges from the seals, it goes inside through the gearbox. It causes to malfunction by blocking some oil galleries, and that wears the box down even quicker. Okay, so basically, now the next step here, I'm going to be removing this kick-down cable. Now this also works hand in hand with the valve body, runs off the accelerator pedal. It's also like the governor, as I explained early on, and the valve body. It's also assists with the gear shift. Right. Our next step here is to remove all the pipes. Now these pipes normally goes to the radiator, you know, the oil cooler of the radiator, because as the car drives, as you drive and the gearbox is working, the oil temperature reaches anything up to 105, 110 degrees Celsius, and it needs to be cooled down to maintain the operating temperature. Right. As I explained, that I'm removing all the pipes, all the switches, all the components, because once I've stripped the box down, we normally have the casings and the components washed in the chemical baths, so that we can get rid of all of these unwanted grit and dust, which can negatively affect the quality of our workmanship when we assemble the transmission. So when I'm assembling the box, you're going to see a nice, sparkling, clean components being assembled. Okay. Now, as you can see here, there's sludge deposits from the worn components inside the transmission. I'm just removing, as I've explained early on, I'm removing each and every little seal component from the main casing. See, there's also some interference with some component in here, and there's oil pump housing. That's really one of the faults I can already see on this transmission. Okay, now I've managed to dislodge the oil pump housing. Now, as I explained early on, this is the heart of the automatic gearbox. Now, as I will be showing you, I'm going to be dismantling this oil pump and assess the condition of the oil pump before I go any further. All right. Oops. Oops. All right. Now that we have the the oil pump disassembled, now, as I say, I could feel a little bit of a groove here, very shallow, very light. That can also cause a loss of oil pressure. Okay. Now this is your heart of the gearbox. This is the actual oil pump, and this is, as I say, this is not your ordinary oil pump that you'll find in many gearboxes. As we call it, these are basically your vane. This is, we call it the vane type oil pump. As it turns, right, it sucks the oil from the sump via the oil filter, and it builds up, and it creates a pressure buildup. Now, when the pressure is is excessive, right, as you as you rev up the engine. Now, as you can see, this is your spring, and it serves as your oil pressure relief valve, right? So in other words, it actually regulates your oil pressure to keep it at its specified limits. Okay, as you can see, still looks in a good condition, yeah? So I'm stripping the stator down, and I want to have a look here. Okay, look, it feels fine to me. You can see the marks, but there's no grooves. It's not worn. It will still work very well. The only thing what I'm going to do is to take this to an engineering shop and ask them to resurface these casings. When you assemble this, now you can see there's a worn, there's a little bit of a groove on either sides, which is a result of this ring. So in other words, if you also put it the wrong way around, you can also lose oil pressure in the process. And also having a look at these surfaces, the surface still looks fine, but I will actually prefer to replace the components to ensure that the life of the gearbox it reaches to the fullest. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this together loose. to the one side. Our next step is removing the internal components. Okay, this is obviously a thrust washer that presses against the first drum. As you can see, this gearbox has been recently assembled, and we've got to determine the premature failure on this box. And now, as I can see by these thrust washers look fairly new. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm not too sure what this component is, but as I say, it's basically a spacer plate. All right. All right, now I'm removing the circlip, which is holding these steel and frictions together. Right, this is a circlip. And now I'll be removing the input shaft, the clutches, and the steel plates. All right, now, as you can see, this is, this is worn, the facings on this clutch plate, or we call it your friction plate. This is your steel plate, and this is how the gearboxes are mounted. This is your friction plate assemblies, right, on your first drum here. Now, as you can see, this friction plate, you can see on the edges here, they are worn, right? So now we've got to establish what is the cause of this premature wear in comparison to this, this friction plate. So if you can see the difference between these two plates, this is discolored, it's darker, and you can see, this is rather thinner than this one. So this is your planetary gear set. So we've also got to have a look for excessive play. So now that feels fine, right? Because sometimes you've got to check for side play, and that's what can also cause the gearbox to make noises as well. This is your thrust washer bearing. Now the other thing we're also going to have a look at, there I've already seen the fault. Have you seen the Teflon ring? This is also most probably the cause of the premature wear on the one friction plate. As you can see, this, if you have a look at the color here, it's supposed to be light brown. This is darkened, and this is from excessive slippage. Now these friction and steel plates are not supposed to slip. It's basically supposed to lock the gears in place, to select the gears. And now, as you can see, this is because of this excessive play. Yeah, and then see this is better than this one, but you're not supposed to have any side play, and that's how you lose oil pressure. Now, on these automatic transmissions, you have to check each and every little component. I mean, it's here for a reason. I want to see why this drum 1, 2. Okay, as you can see, I'm removing these sealer rings out. I'm going to discard them, and Oops. Okay. As you can see, I'm stripping this planetary gear assembly. And as you can see, this is your one-way clutch, your sprag. I'll explain to you now what it does. Okay, these, as you can see, this clutch, friction plate, you can see it's black, it's discolored in comparison to this one. Okay. Now, I'm going to just test the sprag now. Okay, now let's get this. Okay, I'll remove this shaft. The sprag is basically a one-way clutch. It allows the gears to move in one direction and it locks. See, I cannot turn it backwards, but there's another ring here as well. There's too much play. And this is how you will lose oil pressure. The person who previously installed this obviously put in the incorrect Teflon ring on the shaft. Okay, this is the thrust washer. Okay, it's where the drum runs on, so it prevents it takes up the end flat, so that the drum isn't loose on the shaft. This is the support drum here, which is, there's these two bolts. It's an oil feeder and a bolt. In these two bolts here have got holes in it, right? So that's where, from the valve body, the oil feeds through these holes into the valve, into the drums. Okay, you can see it wants to come out. There we go. Right. Already we can see the fault, one of the major mechanical faults on this gearbox. Okay, as you can see here, there's a crack here, and there's another crack here. There's another crack. This is already a sign of a major mechanical failure, all right? And this is where the brake band supposed to function, runs along on this drum, right? The purpose of this brake band, as we call it, it's literally a brake band. It locks onto this drum and stops this drum from rotating inside the gearbox in order to get one of the gears. Now, okay, now I'm going to remove this other drum from the inner drum from this other drum. Okay, and it should be sliding out with ease, but I have to now apply a bit of force. So that already tells you, when I have to apply a bit of force, there's something major wrong here. All right, and you can see this is discolored. These clutches have obviously burnt out due to lack of oil pressure or very little oil pressure. All right. Now let's investigate further. What's the cause of where are we losing oil pressure? Okay. Now this is very easy. You can see it in like day and night. You see this rubber here? Now this is due to possibly excessive clearances on the steel and friction plates. So, causing this piston to move a bit too far out. And when it returns to its resting position, it damages the oil seal. As you can see, this oil seal is damaged and it's sticking out. So we'll be stripping this further down just now, as soon as I've finished stripping the rest of the components from the gearbox. I've managed to remove the circlip. Let's remove the rest of the components. All right. Okay, this is your other set of planetary gears, and this is where you get your different gear ratios from first, second, third, and fourth gear. Okay. You can see this wasn't assembled properly. If you have a look at how the circlip is not, if you focus properly, you can see the circlip isn't inserted in properly. Okay, as you can see, the circlip is a little bit bent. All right. Basically, I've stripped the gearbox right down to the bare casing. I'm going to also remove the rear seal as well. As I said earlier on, I'll be replacing all the seals, all the gaskets, rings, so that we will eliminate any possibility of oil leaks and loss of oil pressure as well. This planetary and the spider gears, they're still good, so I'm going to reuse them. This is, as we term it, as the hard components, the hard parts on the box. So when we say we are overhauling the gearbox, we'll be replacing all the wear and tear items. Wear and tear items is your friction and steel plates, all your gaskets, all your seals. I'm going to have this casings checked and machined at the engineering shop, which I normally send out. And as you can see, as I discussed earlier on, here's another problem here. Too much play on this, on these seals here. It has to be tight. On the next series, I'll be explaining in depth as we go along assembling the transmission. As soon as I've bought the new wear and tear items and parts, we'll also be sending the torque converter, this component here, and this thing weighs a ton, eh? Okay, that has to go to the engineering shop, because it's always important to rebuild the torque converter, no matter what. That's an internal. It might fit onto the gearbox. It might seem to be not part of the box, but it's every part of an automatic transmission. So, as I say, I always rebuild torque converters when I rebuild the automatic gearboxes. I've stripped the gearbox down, and now the conclusion to the failure of the box was it wasn't properly assembled. Now, as you can see, when you were watching me stripping the box down, I started off with the torque converter, removing it. I explained to you the functions of the torque converter, going to the sump of the gearbox, removing it, removing the valve body of the gearbox, explaining to you how it works. And now, from there, we went into the internals of the gearbox. from the first input shaft to the output shaft. As you saw, that there were some of the clutches or the friction plates that were burnt out due to lack of oil pressure. The one drum was also cracked, so that's also due to incorrect assembly. And as I did explain to you, the Teflon rings on the shafts, there was too much play, causing the loss of oil pressure. So when there's a loss of oil pressure, well, the clutches are going to burn out. And when they burn out, well, the car is going to get stuck and it will not be able to move forward. So I hope you found this informative, and I hope you enjoyed watching this YouTube. And I hope you look forward to seeing our next parts where we are assembling the gearbox.